His productions have had masks, narrators, dancers, and larger than life-size puppets to wow audiences who had never seen something like this before. I am at Dadi Padumjee's house to speak to him about puppetry and life around puppetry. Welcome to the show, Dadi.
Thank you.
This is a general perception that puppetry lends itself to kids' audiences, but you've gone much beyond that. So how do you explain this perception, and how did you manage to break out of that?
The perception is not mine. Actually, all traditional puppet theatre anywhere in the world is family oriented. It's not just for children. It's for adults as well as children. In India, you have about 7 or 8 states which have living traditions of puppetry, and either they're folklore or gathas or mythology, epics, and children as well as adults watch it. The perception that it's only for children has come maybe from the 20s, from the West, where no doubt it is a good medium for children. 1920s. No doubt it is a good medium for children. It's non-threatening, it's educative. And so there have been groups in the erstwhile East Bloc socialist countries where they only had state-sponsored puppetry for children, children's puppet theatre.
Okay.
And then there were places where they use adult theatre. Today all that has disappeared and it has merged. The directors are working for children, they're working for television, educational programs with Muppets, the adult performances, so that depends on the director.
But is there any change in the medium in terms of the usage because of which now it lends itself to all age groups, or there wasn't any conscious effort?
It depends. Like if I consider my own work, there would be some performances which are for adults as well as children. We call them family performances. Some are geared more for children, some are geared more for adults. So it depends today on, in contemporary work,
right,
it depends on the director, as in any other artistic form.
You as a director, if you were to cater to a children's audience versus an adult audience or a general age group audience, what is it that you would keep in mind?
The theme would be, I think, the presentation of the theme, visualization, the types of puppets. For instance, one of our most popular performances right now for children, as well as for adults actually, but more for children, is Kalpataru, which is based on a book by Shel Silverstein called The Giving Tree. We have adapted this thing with shadow puppets, actors. It goes much better for children, though it is a family show. What we are rehearsing right now is a performance piece called Heer Ke Waris, which is based on Heer Ranja, the story, but it is both the 18th century story as well as the actors who present today's world, and the things haven't changed much. We have the same problem. Now this performance does not go for 6-7-year-olds but above, teenagers and adults.
Apart from the storyline, how do you execute a puppet show for children versus a puppet show for all age groups?
I don't know. It's it has to be the theme. The look of the puppets or the design would be maybe a little different, but again that comes to the person who's directing or designing the play. So you would have to keep children in mind as to what age group you're performing for.
So in your case, what is it, if you were to give an example of a earlier production for children, is there anything that you can think of that?
The two performances we have done, Anokhe Vastra, which is based on the Emperor's New Clothes, which was done with large masks, which is the fun show, sort of the colors, the way, the caricature, and the piece Kalpataru. Both of these go very well with children, more for children I would say, though adults also watch it. So it's just the design and the look of the piece, the music, the text, all these things.
If you were to talk about the music that was used, say, in one of these productions, is there any particular kind that you would go for if you were designing something for children?
No, I wouldn't. I would use music which would go with the performance, because I wouldn't treat children as, you know, that they wouldn't understand this or that. So it would have to be something that does not necessarily spoon feed them, I would say.
Apart from traditional stories, you've done a lot of contemporary issues. You've sort of showcased a lot of contemporary issues. One of them is HIV/AIDS. Can you just rewind to the creative process that went into putting this on stage?
The HIV subject and substance abuse came about 6-7 years ago. It was a UNESCO project. What my challenge there was that the subject was to work with a marginalized group, and as I had earlier worked and had connections with the Salam Balak Trust, which was in a Delhi Street Kids program, their first 18-year-olds were going to come out of the center. They normally encourage young youth to come out and work, and they have a lot of input on craft, drama, things like that. So about 7 or 8 of these youths came out and joined this program. They became puppeteers. Today they are living on puppetry, some of them. And the idea here was to make, for me the challenge was to make the medium and the message meet, because it was a serious message, but how do you attract people in 15-20 minutes, or a street show, or in a basti, or in a school? So this is the challenge. So we used puppets, masks, actors, we had synopsis, script writers. One was on discrimination, one was on awareness, the other was substance abuse, was on peer pressure in schools. So things like that, and it went all over Delhi, schools, institutes,
In terms of the selection of the actual puppets, was there any conscious decision as to how they would be? So
yeah,
could you
because
just go
it
into
depends
that?
if it was an indoor show, this would be better, or if it was an outdoor street show, it would be better. What sort of sound can we carry outside, battery operated things, what would we do, because it's performing on the street with other sound.
So what did you do finally?
So we eventually did, each show was very different in its look. Some had masks, some had large masks, some had puppets. So, and it was all live. The text was live, it was not recorded. Sometimes the music was recorded, and that was on, wherever we went, you had to connect to a cable. Also, all these performances went through a counselor, social worker, or an NGO working in that area. So it's not that we just went there and performed. We went through them. They used the performance as a catalyst to discuss further. So that was the idea.
You now have your own outfit, which is Ishara. Why did you feel it was necessary to have your own setup?
Well, everybody at some point of time, I came to Delhi in 1980, 80 to 86 I was with the center, Sri Ram Center,
yes.
And then started the freelance work which was called the Ishara Puppet Theatre. 2001 it was registered as a trust, the Ishara Puppet Theatre Trust. And I suppose, I don't know, it became more formal. If you were applying for grants, which you rarely get, then you need a registered society, a trust, and it gives you a base at least to work through. And it gets a little more formalized, I would say, for people.
Do you feel that it has given you the freedom to work on projects that you would otherwise not have done so, or no?
No, I don't think that's the case. That is not there. The freedom is there, always there. The freedom, if it is curtailed, comes from if someone is giving a sponsorship or commissioning a program. Then you either agree, you disagree, or you work within those parameters where somebody wants, like the UNESCO project. Now that came with idea of what is the message that they want to put across.
No,
but they didn't interfere.
No, what I'm saying is the comparison between working for a repertory like you did for 6 years versus working on your own.
They both have their benefits. There you had a nice umbrella, there was a building, you had space, you had weekend shows, things like that. That doesn't exist anymore. So now, but then here you have your own workshop, studio, you do work, you're on your own, you can decide what you want to do. We work a lot with schools. We do a lot of slightly different annual day productions. We've just come back from Dehradun. We've done schools at Welham Girls, Boys, Summer Valley. We work with puppets, with actors, with children, where they want not just conventional drama, but a visual piece with poetry, music. So that's how, so it depends that it's, in fact, we will be going now to work in Mumbai, Dharavi. They have a festival in February, and their subject a lot of artists work there, and they've asked us to come with our group and work with a theatre group and craft group there on the subject of TB, because they said that is one of the major problems there, and they would like to find a way to discuss things and, you know, what to do, what not to do.
You've been in this field for
many
years. In the last, say, 5 years, do you feel there has been a major shift in terms of, you know, the influences of, say, new media and other such avenues? What has been your experience?
Sure, there has been. People are exposed to much more, both the audiences as well as the groups. All our modern puppet theatre, contemporary puppet theatre, is mostly in urban areas. So their reach is very different. The traditional puppeteers are also using new methods, mediums, which they get exposed to when they travel or they see some festival show, things like that. Many of the younger the children of traditional families are wanting to try new things. But there is always a bit of a gap because they learn by rote. And they have the epic or their folklore, and that's the repertoire. Now when they're wanting to do something new, they need a way how to dramatize, what would things be, what would not be, and that there is a gap, and I feel that should be filled in by puppeteers in that area, or theatre people, or our academies.
In what way do you think they can fill that?
They have to expose them to workshops. For instance, recently there was the Kerala puppeteer, Tolpava Kuttu it's called, and shadow puppeteer. They do the Ramayana.
Yes.
It's a ritual performance. Now the younger members have started doing craft, selling things, but recently they did a performance on Christ and Christianity coming, you know, St. Thomas coming to Kerala, things like that. In the traditional style of their puppets, in the same iconography of their puppets, adding some new things in it. The performance and the idea was fantastic. It's very good. But the storyline somewhere needed something more, which would come if they had exposure to some drama person or something, how to dramatize, what can you put in, what can you not put in. Otherwise, you just do little pictures and they may not match. But the effort is very good. And all over the world, traditional, if you go to Indonesia, all the Dalangs who are doing the Mahabharata and Ramayana are doing all sorts of other stories, right from dinosaurs to religious stories to folklore. So why not here as well? Tradition is never static. We think that it has to be this and that. And the younger people are saying that, you know, yes, we know this is our tradition, but people are wanting to see other things as well.
Yes.
So how can you, you know, deny us that? The main thing is family, is the social area, the language, and where you come from, the state, in the traditional puppet form. In the contemporary form, it's more like any other art form, artist, a painter or a writer or a musician. They may not come from a family, though now in the world there are many contemporary puppet traditions as well, family traditions have started.
No, but if I were sitting in the audience and I was watching a show, a festival, how would I distinguish between, say, a traditional puppetry presentation and...
That's a good question. That depends from country to country. The technical quality very often in the traditional puppet theatre, the materials used would be very different sometimes from the contemporary
For instance?
I don't know. I mean, maybe using leather for shadow puppets. I might use paper or plastic. I can use leather, but I may not use that. The quality of dramatization and the storyline, I'm talking in the Indian context, would be a little different. The urban puppeteer might have more exposure to it. The traditional puppeteer is going towards it still. Not there as yet. That would be the difference. But it depends individually from group to group. It's very, I mean...
For instance, when you did your first presentation on a professional level, there must have been a certain reaction. So what were they comparing it with in terms of what has been there in the past?
It was interesting because our first presentation in Delhi, 1980s, was a piece called Motu Ki Mooch, and it was from a children's book There used to be a Target children's magazine at that time, Rosalind Wilson, and there was a story called Tiger for Breakfast. And we adapted that and did the script. In fact, it was very interesting. The script was written by Vinod Dua. He was one of the puppeteers at Sri Ram Center when he started. And the idea of using about this size large puppets, we are standing behind the puppets in black, which was very different. It started at sort of a trend. It is done everywhere in the world, but it wasn't being used much in India. And we were mixing actors with puppets, which some people said it's not puppetry, it's not theatre. And my question was that in all traditional puppet or any other traditional form, you have dance, music, theatre, you have all this as an amalgam. So why shouldn't it be here as well? This is a style. The glove puppet traditions of India, in Kerala, in UP, in Bengal, all of them sit in full view of the audience and work their glove puppets. They don't hide behind a screen as in the Western glove puppet tradition. And not many people know about that, because that is going back hundreds of years, and they are seen and they are also acting in the same thing. So we are maybe taken that, or it fits into that scheme of things like that. So basically it's using, for me, it's using scale from a foot high to larger than life puppets, and always using puppets. So what was the
reaction of your audience to your larger than life?
It's become a little bit of a stamp now that if Ishara does it, it has to be large. And now sometimes we want to do smaller things to break that. So I think everybody uses their own way of...
because that was probably the first time audiences in India saw something like that.
We saw larger in that sense, maybe. Yeah.
Are there other people who are following that same
They have.
pattern?
Many people have taken it and adapted that as well to their own situations in Kolkata, in Ahmedabad, in Chennai, Hyderabad. People are using now different things. I cannot say that it's because of my work, but there is more exposure today. The net, you are having, the other thing is our festival. The 13th festival will happen next year. 13 years we've done it for, and you get all types of performance, which are traditional, contemporary, more with actors, more with puppets, visual, and that has created something which is a platform, I feel.
You've been exposed to puppetry from all around the world. How would you index the puppetry in India vis-a-vis the rest of the world? We
have definitely more traditional puppet theatre in India. And all the 4 or 5 techniques, shadow, rod, glove, string, they all exist in India. Some puppeteers are doing very well, some are languishing, the audiences are disappearing, the repertoire has stratified. So that is, I think, our strength. And we also have very good modern puppeteers, and in fact the 2 schools of puppetry in India, modern puppetry, one is from Kolkata. Puppeteers went to one of the masters, Sergei Obraztsov, who's no more, in Moscow and studied with him, and the other, which some of us come from, is Ahmedabad, Hair Contract and the Darpana Academy, where it was more creative work, more educational work with puppetry, more creative work using different materials. And most of our modern puppeteers today we find fit into this, and now there is a new trend as well where they are experimenting with traditional techniques, things. There's a world body called UNIMA, Union International de la Marionnette, and it has about 80 national centers. India is one, and recently UNIMA India did a master class with a Karnataka shadow puppeteer. They brought him out and they had animation students, puppeteers, theatre people, and for 2 weeks he showed them their work, they showed him their work, and there was a sort of discussion going on. And this was again, the idea of UNIMA India was that if there was a training program or a puppet school in India which doesn't exist, what can we teach? How can we teach? Can a traditional puppeteer teach the things to a modern puppeteer or a student, and vice versa? What is the new techniques? How can they be transferred, or what can happen in a good way?
We are now in Dadi's studio, where he comes every day for rehearsals. Dadi, When did you get the studio?
Well, I think we're here since the last 7, 8 years at least. Before that we were in another place, we keep shifting.
And you come here every day in the morning?
Yeah, every morning we are here. The group meets here, we work on our productions. If there is a large production, we are here the full day. Otherwise, we work from 10 to around 12, and then everybody does their own freelance work.
And how do you get your group together?
No, there are 4 people in the group who are permanent members of Ishara. They came during the UNESCO project when we did the HIV and substance abuse. They've been with us for more than 10, 11 years, more than that. And the others about 7, 8 years. The 2 actors, Puneet and Pranav, have come specially in this production, HIVAIDS. So, besides the 4 people, there is a core group, other puppeteers as well. When there's a large production, 7, 8 people. So, it goes from 4 to about 8.
Do you have an audition when you have a
when
play
we
to do?
For the actors, yes, when that's the time. But the puppeteers, most of them we know now, who are freelance puppeteers, who are free to work when the...
Okay. Going back to your education, I believe you took to puppetry from a very young age, and you are self-taught to a great extent. And then you went to NID. So what was the reason for you to go to NID?
Well, I finished my graduation in Pune. That's where I come from. That till then it was all a hobby. And NID I went to, till then puppetry was a hobby. I joined NID in 71. And it was what is now called visual communication, but earlier it was graphic design, and then you specialized in some one of the things of printing, graphics or film. There was no video at that point of time. So I was going into film. Short film making. And
but was that a conscious decision? You felt that it would help you with puppetry, or at that time you had no such
puppetry
idea?
Was still not an idea of a profession.
Okay.
But during the time in Ahmedabad, the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts had a puppet section. And I used to go there every evening to work with them, to study with them. Then I performed with them. And in 1976, Space Application Center in Ahmedabad had the satellite TV instructional experiment site. And that's the time when the Earth Station wanted a puppet studio, a puppet serial for their Nadiad Peach transmission. And I took leave of absence from NID. The last year I was in to start that, and then I didn't go back. Then one thing led to another. I went to Stockholm to study puppetry.
But your NID experience, how did you kind of use it for puppetry?
Everything. In fact, I have greatly indebted to NID because all the most of the stuff, working with different material, color, then the workshop, hardware, all that has come into puppetry. Very often today, not the traditional puppeteers or the modern puppeteers are directors and maybe artists, but they're not necessarily good with walking or drawing and things like that. And that input has definitely come in from NID, so I'm grateful for that.
And then you chose to go to Sweden.
I got a scholarship from the World Puppet Body to study at Stockholm. Michael Meschke had a Marionette Theatre Institute, and that is where some of the influence comes in of working with actors and puppets. Also what you spoke about earlier about performances for adults. Right. Meschke did a lot of theatre pieces with puppets for adults, and something that he said, which keeps coming back, that I don't use it as an ends in itself, puppetry, but as a means to communicate. So I mix it with other media, dance, theatre, music, not just puppets.
Is there any other medium that you want to include in your work now?
Well, we did do a little bit of digital projection, things like that. We're using projection, back projections, things like that for our shadow work. But yeah, each time you keep looking for something different. But it has to be consistent. You have to have the use for it, not just to put it for the sake of an effect.
So, in recent times, what is it that you use that was really, really good?
I have just used something which is not very new, but the overhead projector, which many shadow puppeteers use for including in this performance. we did a piece called Transposition, which is based on Thomas Mann's story of the transposed heads.
Okay.
And it's a Vikram Betal story as well originally. There we used dancers as well as puppets. It was a dance performance in which there was a very good animation, digital animation person called Vishal Dar, and he did the moving images, things like that. So that was our period. But let's see, I don't know what happens in the future.
So all the best.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're going beyond pulling strings.
I hope so.
I've not worked with puppets before, so you know, to actually move out of the puppets and back behind them, and to also do your lines with it is quite an interesting you know, experience for me. There are things you get to observe a lot more, because how he works the puppets himself is quite a learning experience, because we are just novices and then we come and we do something which is completely jarring, and when to move behind the puppets and when to come in front and how to handle them and how to maneuver them while saying your lines is something that you obviously won't know if somebody is not there to guide you.
देखिए, जो भी उनके करीब वो उनके साथ सबसे अच्छा डील करते हैं, और मैं 2000 से उनके साथ हूँ मैं अभी तक, और 2014 चल रहा है, तो काफ़ी अब इतने साल से हो गए, तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि इतने अच्छे इंसान है, तो इतने साल से उनके साथ मैं जुड़ा हुआ हूँ।
मैं दादी सर के साथ काम कर रहा हूँ, और दादी सर के साथ जुड़े हुए मुझे 7 साल हो गए हैं। सर के जो पपेट्री का जो स्टाइल है वो काफ़ी डिफरेंट है, और क्योंकि सर जो पपेट्स यूज़ करते हैं वो काफ़ी लार्ज साइज़ का, स्मॉल, और सर का काम करने का तरीका बिल्कुल डिफरेंट है बाकियों से, क्योंकि जब सर प्ले बनाते हैं तो उसमें बड़े पपेट्स, डांस, म्यूज़िक और थिएटर सब मिक्स करके बनाते हैं, तो वो इंटरेस्टिंग है।
रांझा रांझा कर दीनी मैं, रांझा रांझा कर दीनी मैं, रांझा रांझा कर दीनी मैं, आपे रांझा हुई। ओ सतोनी मैनू धी दो रांझा, सदोनी मैनू धी दो रांझा, हीर नाया को कोई, सदोनी मैनू धी दो रांझा, हीर नाया को कोई, मैनू हीर नाया को कोई। रांझा रांझा कर दीनी मैं, आपे रांझा